Suprememagus, Chapter 81, Celebratory Banquet. All those who were spectating were so astonished to be at loss for words. Scarlet and the headmaster called each other so fast that it was impossible to know who had called first. "What the heck is that thing?" asked Linjos. "How the heck did a 4-year student get her hands on a stunner clacker's venom?" asked Scarlet. Having got his answer already, Linjos returned the favor. "Yesterday that group was attacked by clackers. One of the poisoned ones was rescued and managed to detoxify himself. I never expected for him to actually store the venom for later use. Son of a—" Scarlet turned back at the fight where the tables were quickly being turned. Termin had managed to land safely, but its energy reserves were scraping the bottom of the barrel. Belia, on the other hand, was finally showing all her prowess. By rearranging the eye shards that composed her armor, she was able to change the shape and size of its parts, sacrificing her defense. She turned her limbs in giant swords, hammers, sickles, whatever came to her mind that was better suited to juggle the chingy in midair, while her conjured weapons darted around, piling up the damage. Floria kept sticking close to the rye, while the venom started to take effect, making its movements sluggish and coordinated. Lit instead could feel that something was wrong. Despite all his efforts, after a few blows, Center had managed to put some distance between them, blocking the incoming attacks with air cushions that dissipated the force of each strike before it could reach the crown's body. "Damn it, Solus, remind me never to get close to a magical beast until I get a decent weapon. First the rye, now the crown. I'm too weak to get anything from physical attacks." There, Solus replied. "Look at the bright side. You learned this during an exercise, instead of risking your life on a gamble." "Yeah, you are damn right. This time the glass is half full, even for me." Lit stopped giving chase and started casting another powerful spell. But Center was too fast, even in its debilitated state. Swallowing its pride, the crone admitted defeat, using air fusion and air magic to run away as fast as it could. Centaur swooped down, rescuing Termin from Belia's clutches before it was too late. With a sudden U-turn, it grabbed also Emruk, using true air magic to make both its companions weightless. It was only then that Vision completed the third array, conjuring multiple elemental spheres that would attack any opponent he would design as a target. Alas, there was no one left. To his defense, the whole fight had barely lasted a minute, and every time he had to activate an array or dodge an incoming attack, his casting speed had been severely affected. Words and spells were more suited to be prepared from the rear guard rather than in the line of fire. "Damn," he yelled. "Right now, all the casting and the sweat for nothing? Who cares?" Belia was on cloud 9. "We won! This time, they were the ones running away. We should celebrate." "Where is Lit?" Floria cut her short, refusing to lower her guard yet. "Right here," said a voice from above. Watching his face, one could think they had actually lost. Lit could barely contain his anger and frustration. "Why did I even waste all the time learning martial arts again? They are useless against magical beasts and against humans. I just need a simple spell to kill or incapacitate them." "Well, maybe because you were so clumsy you would trip on your own feet," Solus sarcastically reminded him. "Also, they are not useless. All that footwork practice saved our lives countless times. If in the future you get cornered, what would have you said if you did not do it?" "Oh, why I was so arrogant?" Why I didn't learn them again? You are unbelievable. Nothing is good enough for you. Too cold, too hot, too lukewarm. Enough with your control issues. Quit whining and rejoice. You'll ruin everyone's mood. Just looking at him, everyone assumed back their combat position, believing Lid's demeanor was caused by an impending danger he was going to warn them about. Where is the enemy? Asked Floria, looking left and right, keeping an ear for any suspicious noise. Lid used light vision, searching for the proximities for any sign of danger. Gone, I'd say, even from above, is all trees and small animals. So, did we really win? A radiant smile appeared on Floria's face, finally lowering her stock. She turned towards her companions, her arms raised to the sky in sign of joy. The others followed her suit, getting close to each other. Before something unspeakable like asking him to partake in a group hug could happen, Lid burst their bubble. Do you really want to start screaming in the God-forsaken forest? I say that with all the ruckus we made, it's better to go back to our haven before another uninvited guest shows up. Party pooper, Solus scolded him. Nonetheless, let's get out of here. The rings are empty and your mana reserves are dangerously low. I know, using a tier 4 spell requiring Hess casting, while using 3 kinds of fusion magic really did take its toll. And I can't even use Invigorate too much. Having an apparently infinite mana capacity would raise too many questions. His words spoiled the happy mood, and by the time they got back at the cave, most of the euphoria was gone. I still can't believe it. Belia's cheeks flushed at the thought of their battle. I resent that. My plan was rock solid, Floria objected. Indeed it was, but you misunderstood me. I meant that I still can't believe I didn't screw up. After how I behaved during the first day, I was starting to believe I was a hopeless case. There. A single slip-up means nothing. It can even happen to the best of us. Vincent was mostly speaking about himself, trying to be supportive at the same time. They started sharing the highlights of each one's contribution to the victory, patting themselves on the back and complimenting to each other. Lid was already nauseous from all the niceties, seriously considering to cut off the next hand on his shoulder. If we want to eat more than hot air today, we need to prepare the meat. Has any of you ever skinned and gutted some game? Lid used earth magic to conjure several jars from the ground to collect the non-edible parts before destroying them with darkness magic. A awkward silence followed. I never hunted alone before. I would always give my game to the cook. He always took care of the rest. Floria was embarrassed, so she fiddled the ground with her foot. Interesting, Lid thought. Floria does that every time she feels uncomfortable. I could exploit this style if I ever decide to plagiarize poker. Or if you are curious about who she is interested, Solus chimed in. What? Come on, Spoilsport, don't you want to see some romance? You are all so young and hormonal. Wouldn't it be cute if 2 of your teammates hook up? It would be a disaster. First, their mind would become even emptier. And second, I don't want to spectate some kind of making out. The cave is little and my patience is short. Solus mind-potted at him. According to Solus' observation, Floria wasn't uncomfortable around any of her teammates. That was disappointing to her. She really wanted someone to jump on Lid just to see his reaction. I know only the basics, but I'm a fast learner, Vincent volunteered, winking at the girls while thinking. Neither of them is really cute, but beggars can be choosers, he thought. I will show to the girls that the real men doesn't fear a little guts and blood. Having already experienced high school, Lid could recognize that look at first sight. Vision had that undeserved confidence mixed with desperation and willingness to be intimate with anything that moved. Okay, Lid said, hiding a cruel grin behind his kind mask. First, you have to drain the blood. To do that, you hang them upside down and then cut off the head. He made an exaggerated movement on purpose, sending a little blood everywhere. Vision's face lost its color, turning pale. Lid mercilessly handed him a big fluffy rabbit. Despite being already dead, its big round eyes were staring at Vision like asking, "Why did you kill me?" While Vision was trying to come up with an excuse to go back with the girls, Lid had already took the skin off his prey, handing it to Vision. "Put it in a jar for me, please." Lid never stopped smiling with a kind and brotherly expression on his face. Vision let the rabbit fall from the shock. When his hands touched the greasy and sticky side of the skin, he turned green, fighting against the urge to puke. "You're a monster," Solus accused him. "Guilty as charged," he confessed. "At this point, you need to perform a big incision and pull out all the organs, like this." He turned the gutted rabbit towards Vision to let him better appreciate the view. Just to keep on the safe side, Lid reinforced the harsh barrier and conjured the pot really close to his teammates. "Why are you still holding the skin?" Lid pretended to not have noticed he was frozen stiff. "Here, toss away the guts for me, please." When Lid handed him the viscera too, it was too much for Vision. He fainted on the floor like a dead weight. Lid had expected some screaming and puking, but that was fine too. "What happened?" the girls asked after hearing the thump sound. They had run into the bathroom after the first blood. "Nothing. Seems Vision is not cut to be a hunter though." After getting rid of the poser, Lid's movements became much faster and precise. It wouldn't take him long to finish. "Does anyone know how to cook?" he asked. "Are you asking that because we are girls?" Floria sounded quite enraged. "No, just because I hope someone can give me a hand." "Sorry," Belia said. "I know how to eat, though." "What about you, oh, fearless leader?" Lid poked her since Floria still refused to reply. "I never got the chance nor the desire to learn, but I'm quite skilled at eating too. Thank you for asking." Floria took a mental note to at least learn how to butcher, otherwise her hunted skills would lack a practical use. Before starting to cook, Lid cleaned everything and destroyed the jar and their content. He called the girls to wake up their fallen comrade and showed them how to use first magic for cooking. When the delicious smell of roasted meat started to spread, Vision fully regained his senses and appetite. Using so many powerful spells while fighting such a hard battle had exhausted most of their mana and stamina. They managed to wolf down everything they had got during the morning, leaving nothing for dinner. Despite not having salt or any spice, their meal was seasoned with victory and hunger, making that the best meal the three of them had ever had in their lives. Suprememagus, Chapter 82, Interludium. After lunch, the group fell asleep. The stress and the fatigue from the last 2 days weighed heavily on everyone, but Lid and Floria were the most affected. They had been on their toes non-stop since their arrival in the forest. The only moments of rest were those that they spent in the cave. Lid had pushed his body so hard during those days that he was itching all over. He used invigoration as much as he could, and that meant very little. From his experiments with the potions, Lit knew that the physical enhancing ones had side effects just like fusion magic that only proper rest could remove. Invigoration could make up for them, but how could he possibly justify his ridiculous recovery speed? His mind kept searching for a solution, but without success. Restless, he started reconsidering his group situation and chances of success. The more he thought about it, the more the exercise didn't make any sense. How the heck is a group of teenagers supposed to last for a whole week, with no prior notice nor someone capable of hunting? I can't see even a genius get past the third day. The headmaster's magical beast attacked once a day, and each time it was much worse. If by tomorrow they get serious, it will be our end. And that's just the icing of the cake. There's also the fear, the need to search for food and shelter, not to mention things like those spiders that just want to eat you. Sure, we could just hole ourselves in the cave, but if Solace is right, then we would only risk of damaging our grades. I don't know how long I can still hold on. The forced cohabitation is pushing me to the brink of insanity. My hatred and rage are eating me from the inside. It's only a matter of time before I snap. Floria Group woke up only for a frugal dinner at the expenses of Lit's food stock before going back to sleep. The moon was shining bright in the sky, and from its favorite spot, Scarlet was contemplating the last piece of the puzzle that had fallen into his lap. The Scorpicore was atop the tallest hill of the forest, the only place from where something of its size could sit comfortably while looking at its domain. First, a group of 5 men pups with 6 mana cores. That alone was beyond odd, but with the clackers ravaging the forest, I had almost forgot about it. But then, somehow, one of those men pups manages to remove from his body the stunner clacker's venom without it losing much of its potency. I know it's not a big deal to detoxify it with magic or an antidote, but extracting it from a victim? Not even a magical beast capable of using light magic would be able to accomplish such a feat, let alone a human with their silly imitation of magic. It would require to be able to locate and manipulate the venom coursing through the body with surgical precision. That's something that only an awakened like me would be able to do. I need to have a chat with this pup before this charade comes to its end. Scarlet's elite squad was in deep slumber, resting to recover from the many wounds received that day. The Scorpicore set a powerful barrier around its beloved minions so that no one could bother them without incurring a sudden death. Then, with a powerful flap of its wings, Scarlet took off, using his gold-rimmed enchanted pince nez to find where the anomaly was hidden. There were just a few dozen groups remaining. Between that and its speed, finding the cave was a simple task. Once outside, it suddenly realized to have overlooked a major problem. Damn it, how the heck do I start a conversation without scaring the wits out of him? Scarlet scratched its right ear with the back leg, searching for a solution. I got so used talking to Linjos and his minions that I had almost forgot that my appearance can be quite intimidating. Kidnapping isn't a good icebreaker. I could enter after devolving to a cat. But why should he talk to me? Damn, this is going to be harder than I expected. After pacing for a while, hoping Lid would somehow notice its presence and wake up, Scarlet decided to change its approach. Thanks to the pince nez, it could see that the anomaly was a ring. The artifact was different from everything Scarlet had ever encountered. Its curiosity was more piqued by the second. Scarlet decided that if the owner was unavailable, it could always try with the artifact. Scarlet sent a tendril of mana, thin as a silk thread, to connect its manacore to Solus, establishing a telepathic link. Whatever you are, I demand an explanation. What are you trying to accomplish in my domain? Why are you leeching energy from a helpless pup? Speak, or I'll crush you between my fangs. Scarlet didn't like a human much, but was still polite towards them, hoping to avoid useless conflicts. But when facing cursed object, it would show no mercy, stooping down at their level and speaking the only language they knew, violence. Hearing that an alien voice resounding in her mind, Solus was terrified, instantly waking up. It had been such a violent intrusion that even Lit regained his senses, his conscience dragged along with hers. "What is happening?" he asked. "I don't know. There's a voice in my head and a giant monster thingy outside." Using live vision, Lit could see through the cave's wall Scarlet's silhouette and energy signature. His mouth went agape in front of the biggest and strongest magical creature he had ever seen. "Solus, what is manacore?" His mouth went dry. Lit needed to lean against the wall to not fall on his knees from the shock. "Bright blue, but there's something odd. The amount of mana it holds, it's beyond words. It is like the word energy is willing seeping in its body. It's similar to your breathing technique, but unbelievably stronger." "Lit, I'm scared." "Same. Where are the professor? Without them we are dead." Knowing there wasn't much he could do, Lit activated invigoration, quickly replenishing all his mana reserves and restoring his physical strength. If he had to die, he would die fighting without holding back. Watching the word energy flow inside the pup through its pin's nest, Scarlet winced of joy. One of its questions was already answered. He was clearly unawakened too. But the problem now was to ascertain how deep he had been corrupted. Using another thread of mana, Scarlet created a separate mind link with Lit. "Fear not, I mean no harm. Otherwise, I would have just made the hill collapse, burying you all alive. I only want to understand the cursed object, purpose, and goal. I don't want to kill you. But if you try defending that parasite, you leave me no choice." Lit was so shocked hearing another voice in his head that he started to believe he was actually going mad. Everything was happening so fast, and he could not make head or tails of those words. "What cursed object? Who are you, and what do you want from me?" Luckily, unlike his mind link with Solus, this one was active, not passive. It requires little will to pass information or thoughts, so he could channel his anger and conceal his fear. "Do you deny having a living being at your finger?" Since the monster knew so much, Lit realized that lying would be useless. The best he could do was hide part of the truth. "No, but it's just a dimensional ring. It does not harm." Solus' real nature had to be kept hidden, otherwise the creature could take her for itself. "You fool," Scarlet sneered. "Who would give life to such a trivial object? Don't you realize how deep is its deception? I can't believe that despite being unawakened, you are so stupid. It's clearly a lie, and you know it." "I'm what?" Lit asked. That conversation was making less and less sense. Scarlet snorted, cursing humans and their inability to take care of their own. Another self-taught, not bad pup. Unawakened is someone that has learned to manipulate his own manacore. Not only it allows him to use magic the same way magical beasts do, guiding it with the mind instead of the body, but also makes possible to refine the manacore, drawing in the world energy and permanently adding to its own. It's what you just did, Pop. Now tell me, how do you call your talent? Every one of you I met gives it different names. First magic, the supreme art, original magic, whatever. True magic. Litmine blurted without a second thought. He had finally met someone that could explain to him true magic. Suprememagus, Chapter 83, Interludium, Part 2. True magic? Scarlet sneered. Another pretentious name for my collection then. Why don't you come out? Talking this way is tiresome. What about my professors? Aren't you afraid of them meddling? No, right now their surveillance mirrors just show you sleeping. It requires a bit of effort, but I can tamper with them for a while. Lit swallowed a lump of saliva. The monster wasn't lying. It could have killed him 10 times already. But that only made the situation even more scary. How do I get out without waking the others? A warp step appeared in front of him, leading in front of the Scorpicore, fighting hard to keep his knees from shaking. Lit started waving all his strongest spells, preparing for the worst. Scarlet stared at him with an inquisitive look. Despite being so close, it was hard to perceive any trace of corruption, and that was already a good sign. What do you want from me? Lit asked with one spell ready for each of his fingers. I already told you. I just want your cursed object. After that, I will get out of your hair. My partner is no cursed object or anything. It's just an artifact. You are clearly mistaken. Do you even know what a cursed object is? No, Lit admitted. You see, no matter how powerful an artifact is, it has no life. It's just an object. Scarlet handed to him his pince nez. This is an artifact. Believe me. Now, use your true magic and tell me, does it feel alive to you? Lit used invigoration and live vision, perceiving many and powerful magics within it, but no life. It had mana flow, but no mana core or life force. Solus, what about your mana sense? It indeed has more power than many of your professors, but no mana core. That huge castle is a massive and powerful artifact, but is it alive? Scarlet pointed to the white griffin with one of its claws. Once again, both live vision and mana sense reported a huge flow of mana, but no mana core. No, Lit reluctantly said. Now what about your ring? Lit used invigoration for the first time ever on Solus. Just like in the past, he had used live vision to see her mana flow and life force. Invigoration revealed a small yellow mana core. Why didn't you ever tell me you have such a weak core? Lit asked, surprised by the fact that she was so weak despite all the years spent together. Well, you never asked. Besides, what did you expect? After almost starving to death, I was left with barely a red one. I still need time to recuperate. It has a yellow mana core, Lit admitted. Scarlet had to swallow down a huge scoff. That confirms my worries. That thing is playing him like a fiddle. There's no way a living artifact has a just yellow mana core. It must be using some trick to cloud his senses. Scarlett nodded and proceeded with its explanation. Life cannot be created on a whim, from nothing. There are only two ways to give life to an inanimated object, and both require a terrible price. The first method requires a mage or a creature very powerful and very insane. A cursed object is when someone takes out a huge portion of himself and binds it to a powerful artifact. A lich phylactery is the most common example, but is not the worst kind. Some creatures have a deep grudge or insane ambition, but no will to live forever. So they pass this obsession of theirs to one of the objects they are most attached, giving it life. But beware, despite having a mind of its own and immense power, a cursed object is most of the times just a shadow of the worst parts of his creator. It entices its new masters with promises of power and glory, but every time they are used, the boundary between master and servant gets thinner. The mind link they share allows the object to tamper with the owner's mind, changing it little by little, until he becomes a copy of the object's maker, striving to complete its loose ends. And when the user dies, they just search for a replacement. What about the second method? Lit was stalling for time, hoping someone would come to his rescue. Well, that's even worse, to the point it's part of the so-called forbidden magic. Forbidden? Lit had never heard about any kind of magic being forbidden, not even necromancy. Yes, forbidden magic is the most horrible thing a magical creature could do, using the life of others to empower its creations. Such magic can give birth to miracles, but the price is too high, the risk immense. It's a natural process, almost impossible to balance. One tiny mistake can turn the miracle into a nightmare. The most common case of forbidden magic is when the mage is so obsessed by someone to resort to magic to bound him or her to an object. The victim becomes doomed to an eternity of slavery, and after the death of its captor, the only thing that awaits is madness. Still a prisoner, incapable of free will, doomed to obey whoever holds the magic's focus. I am no hero, nor a self-proclaimed ally of justice, but destroying such abominations is an act of mercy towards the victim of this perverted kind of magic. Thank you for your lesson, but my partner is neither. Lit clenched his fist, unwilling to submit. Isn't there any way to prove to you that you are wrong? He asked as a last resort, hoping to avoid utter death. Of course there is. Scarlett's tail stooped, waggling, assuming a question mark shape. Being the tail of a scorpion rather than a cat, the gesture resulted threatening. He took several steps back, his whole body ablaze for the mana he was about to unleash. Damn tail. Sorry, habits die hard. Scarlett put the tail under its body in a sign of peace. I just need to touch you, the Scorpicore said, raising its huge paw. If I'm wrong, which I consider highly unlikely, I will leave the both of you alone. You have my word. It makes sense. Even Lit needed physical contact to use invigoration. If the Scorpicore had a similar technique, it was bound to work the same way. Lit nodded and Scarlet pressed 2 digital pods on his forehead. Being much older and experienced than Lit, its aura technique not only had all invigoration properties, but it also allows Scarlet to get a glimpse of the subject's true nature. Under the effects of aura, no deception was possible. Both the body and the mind could not lie. What Scarlet saw sent cold shivers down its spine. The body was fine, and so was the mind and the manacore. Aside from a small imbalance caused by too much refining, it was something that would fix by itself with time. But where Lid's true self was supposed to be, there was only a bottomless void made of rage, grieving, and hate. Staring into that abyss, the Scorpicore could see the abyss staring back, trying to taint its mind with twisted logic and unbridled fury. Circling the void, there were several lights keeping the void at bay and preventing it to devour everything. Getting closer to the lights, Scarlet was able to see that each of them had a face and a name. Carl, Eliza, Lark, and so on. Only one light had a name, but no face. Solus. Order and chaos. What the heck is this, Bob? This is exactly what I would expect it to find in a cursed object, not into any living being. If the corruption spreads so fast, it means it's way worse than I thought. I will probably be forced to kill them both. To confirm its doubts, Scarlet touched the ring, only to once again remain completely dumbfounded. Not only the manacore was yellow, making it the worst living artifact ever, but there was no trace of madness, pain, or ill will. There was only a light, like the Scorpicore was used to see in cubs and babies. The being in the ring was so naive to be upsetting. The black dots encompassing the light had all the same name and face. Lit. Being so close to the abyss for so long seemed to have affected the living artifact, making it less trustful and cynic. By the Great Mother, Scarlet's head was spinning. The human is corrupting this thing, not the other way around. What madness is this? Because of the shock, the Scorpicore took a step back, trying to rearrange its chaotic thoughts. Whatever you are not a kid. You are a monster, Scarlet growled. Well, you are not that good looking either, at least according to human standards. Lit filled himself to the brim with mana with invigoration. The beast's tone and glare had already said all he needed to know. Insolent whelp, who cares about looks? It's not about what you do. It's because of what I am. Lit completed the phrase, remembering Protector's words. I'm sorry, Solus. It's been great knowing you. It seems you'll have to find another partner. Please, forget about me and live as long and happily as you can. The disparity between Lit and his opponent wasn't something that could be overcome with dirty tricks or ingenuity. Lit was preparing himself to die. His only hope was to give Solus enough time to run away from the mad beast. No way, it's only my fault. If it wasn't for me, this thing would have left you alone. I am not leaving you. I have no chance of my own. I much prefer go down fighting instead of running. Solus squeezed her ring from her heart, preventing Lit to take it off. Thanks to its aura technique, Scarlet was still able to see both the manacores, The ability had long-lasting effects. For a brief moment, the cores started to pulse in union. The yellow one took the excess energy from the cyan one, turning green and allow it to stabilize to the next level. The two cores' resonation allowed its magic power to go way beyond its limits, to the point that the ring grew and expanded, covering the right hand in a form of a fingerless glove. It was still nothing compared to the Scorpicor's strength, and yet the creature stared in amazement. Nothing that night made any sense. Its patience had run out. "I yield," Scarlet said, leaving Lit and Solus as shocked as the Scorpicor. Suprememagus, Chapter 84, Day 3. "You what?" Lit kept using invigoration, overloading his body with mana. He had no reason to believe such a change of heart. "Yeah, sorry. Finding so many mysteries at once overwhelmed me for a second. I will stay true to my word and leave you alone. I don't know what that thing is, nor what you are, but that's not a reason enough to kill." Scarlet noticed that aside from the fleeting second, both the manacores had gone back to normal. The weak artifact was back being a ring. "What do you mean saying you don't know what I am?" Lit was now more scared than before. "You may have the appearance of a kid, yet you are not. You are closer to an abomination rather than a human being. The opposite stands for your partner. That thing is not a twisted perversion of life, but a living being like I never met before." My reasoning was based on false assumptions. I almost let my arrogance guide my hand, and for that I apologize. The Scorpicors lowered its head, its menacing aura and aggressive stance subside. "Why did you think my partner is deceiving me?" He didn't know how to react. The only thing he could think of was to act friendly, but remain vigilant. "Do you know that it's taking part of your life force?" "Well, yes. When I found my ring, it was on the verge of death. We have helped each other ever since." The pup kept spewing unbelievable truths like they were the most natural thing in the world. Scarlet's head was spinning. The Scorpicor took pride in its knowledge and wisdom, but none of it helped making sense of that mess. On the verge of a nervous breakdown, Scarlet decided to perform a last attempt. It placed the left paw on its head and the right on Solus, while activating aura. Their thoughts cannot lie. If the living artifact attempts to tamper with my readings, I will notice immediately, it thought. "Are you a human or an abomination?" it asked Lit. "As far as I know, a human." "Truth. Were you filled with rage before finding your partner?" "I think I was even worse before." Truth with sincerity on top. "Do you have any ill will towards the human?" This time Scarlet asked Solus. "No, I like him very much." That answer brought the Scorpicor to the peak of frustration. "Everything I ever learned is a lie," it screamed in despair, letting them go. Unable to hold so much mana any longer, it let it disperse. Still in a daze, the Scorpicor had turned its back, preparing to leave. "Wait! At least explain to me what made you change your mind." "The link between you two is not parasitic. That thing is not really sucking out your life force. On the contrary, it allows you to use a bigger flow of mana than you naturally could, preventing the excess energy to damage your body and using it as its nutrition. Two birds with one stone. Killing you is also out of question. You did nothing wrong. I have watched your team during these days. You have showed respect towards the forest and its animals. As long as you behave, you are free to live your life as a student. It's none of my business. The Scorpicore took the skies with a single flap of its wing. A good-natured cursed object and an abomination capable of retaining its self-consciousness. Now I have seen everything. Lid had so many questions left unanswered in a corner of his mind. What was true magic? What was the awakened agenda? How to contact them? But the only thing he could think about was the joy of being still alive. He didn't want to meet the Scorpicore ever again, at least until he was strong enough to hold its grounds. Lid went back to the cave. His body was already starting to experience the after effects of the mana overload. Moving as silently as he could, he went into the cave bathroom, finally losing control of his bladder. The next day, he needed to use invigoration just to get back to his previous condition. Between the physical and psychological stress of the encounter with the Scorpicore, he had barely been able to catch some sleep. He was in a terrible shape, and so were his companions. Magic could heal all wounds, but there was only one way to recover their stamina without rest. The healer had to share his life force with darkness magic, but Lid was the most tired of them. While consuming breakfast, eating the herbs and fruits left from the previous day, Lid made its speech. Guys, why don't we just give up? Everyone at the table was surprised, but no one seemed outraged at the idea. I mean, look at me. I'm a healer, yet I fought in the line of fire from the first day. I already used every trick in my book. If those beasts come back today, I doubt we have a chance to make it. We were sent here to learn, and damn if we learn more than a thing or two. Now we are physically exhausted and mentally tired. If this was a battlefield, I'd say that it's better to retreat to fight another day rather than fighting a losing battle. With deep eyes and aging bodies from 2 days sleeping on the ground, the proposal sounded quite alluring. As much as it pains me, I can't accept. Floria spoke first. If this was a battlefield, you would be right not once but 100 times. But this is just an exercise, and we have a lot to learn, even from defeat. Lid nodded. He could not refute her reasoning. Yeah, Belia chimed in. I understand your point. You are a skilled hunter, able to stand your ground from the first day. But yesterday was my first true battle. I can't give up after achieving so little. It would fill me with too much regret. My thoughts exactly, said Vision with a fierce look. I can understand the burden on your shoulders, but this is too important to quit like that. If you don't think you can cover for me, don't. I need to learn how to defend myself. I refuse to be a burden to the group. Fantastic, Lid thought. The group of rascals had to grow up a spy at the worst moment possible. I am beyond exhausted. All I want is a hot bath and finally free from Big Brother's eyes. Don't worry, Lit. Floria patted his back. I know that between the potions, the fighting, and the healing, your body must be screaming in pain. I'll do my best to make your job as easy as possible. Lit smiled, inwardly cursing his bad luck. Yeah, and by tonight I'll be popping diamonds, he inwardly added. Once again, there they started by hunting, away from the clacker's nest. They managed to gather meat, fruits, but remained on their toes the whole time. Floria was having second thoughts about her earlier decision. Lit was the only one that could use potions, and her first plan heavily relied on that to establish their tempo and not leave vision open. His spells could turn tables, but required a lot of time to prepare, being their magnitude and area of effect that big. But after going all out 3 times in 2 days, she could see how worn out Lit was. His hands kept trembling, his pace was unsteady. Knowing potion side effects, she thought they were the cause of his lack of vigor. Instead, he was still suffering from the shock of the previous night. Being in a life or death situation was something he was used to. Being discovered as not being a kid, but rather an abomination, had given him a real scare. Was the Scorpicore right about him? And what about Solo's origins? Lee only wanted some peace and quiet to calm his nerves, yet he was forced to use live vision, alternating it with Solo's mana sense to not waste too much energy. Both their abilities required focus and mana to be kept active, especially for Solo's, with her weak mana core and poor mana capacity. Yet, they had to do it, knowing that it was only a matter of time before the next attack. For that day, Floria was paired with Lit and Belia with Vision. "Incoming!" Lit yelled, prompting his teammates to assume battle formation. There had been no warning this time. Everyone was astonished by Lit's keen sense and sharp instinct. Floria and Belia managed to conjure their equipment, but this time the magical beasts were going all out. Infused with air magic, Emrook and Centaur moved faster than ever before, blitzing between their rank and forcing them on the defense. Floria's team could follow them with their eyes, but sadly their bodies were not able to keep up. Without potions and so little experience fighting on the forest ground, their only hope was to activate the flight spell from their wings. That relieved part of the pressure from Emrook, but made Centaur even more dangerous. The Kron was able to move faster than an arrow. Now that they hadn't the cover of rocks and trees anymore, striking with spells and talons. In a few seconds, their rhythm was destroyed, and Terman's arrival sealed the deal. This time, the Chingy didn't charge at all. Instead, chose to move silently, making the ground soft as a carpet. Using its partner distraction, he waited on an opportunity to make its move. As soon as the students' formation loosened up, he struck at their weak point, Vision, knocking him out with a single hit of its tusk. Lit yelled to warn his teammates, but everyone was already locked in battle. A professor appeared rescuing Vision, and from that point it all spiraled out of control. In the academy's environment, Lit could barely exert half of his real power, and now that amount was halved again. His body was devoid of strength, his mind out of focus, still replaying the conversation with Scarlet. But most of all, he lacked motivation. He was sick and tired of pulling most of the weight of the team by himself. "It's my fault. I made everything too easy for them for too long. I attack, defend, heal, provide the meals, hunt, and cook. At this point, they could as well shove a broom up my butt so that I can swipe the floor for them when walking. If they want some experience, fine by me, but I'm done babysitting." Lit was lost when a lightning left him temporarily stunned, allowing Center to strike his back. Termin and Emruk teamed up, taking apart Belia's armor like a tuna can. While Center kept Floria busy, Emruk managed to bite her exposed neck, but stopped his fang before doing any damage. After that, the three magical beasts disappeared as fast as they had come. The exercise was over. Being the last one standing, Floria was filled with regret and frustration. There were so many things that she had overlooked, too many mistakes she could have avoided with a more proper planning. She finally realized her arrogance, always relying on Lit's apparently infinite tricks to keep the group afloat whenever something outside her plans happened. She should have given it more thought and less wishful thinking. By putting so much burden on a single unit, any group was bound to crumble as soon as the key member was unable to keep up. When Professor Thurman appeared to take her back at the White Griffon, Floria was still looking back at those last 3 days in hindsight. They had made so many mistakes. Her plans were actually so full of holes that she couldn't believe they had managed to last for that long. Suprememagus, Chapter 85. Results. When Lit regained his senses, he was back in the main hall at the ground floor of the academy. While getting up slowly, trying to shake off the lingering effect of the heat at the back of his head, he noticed that the hall was filling up quickly. There were lots of warp steps opened. Some were being left active, allowing students from the 4th floor of the White Griffon to reach the hall. Most of the warp steps, though, were used by Professor going to and from the forest, bringing back the students one by one. I guess that the 3rd day marked the moment when the magical beast stopped holding back. Yeah, Solus said, glad to feel the safety of the castle walls around them. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised that so many people managed to survive this long. Not to brag, but I was sure our group would be the one lasting longer. I didn't, Lid replied. There are too many variables to consider, like who had been warned beforehand by a relative, hence coming fully prepared, or how much time they spent outside. Not to mention that maybe some groups were just lucky, being comprised of people that were actually able to cooperate, instead of needing someone that guided them step by step. Judging from the expression of his schoolmates, no one had any idea what they were waiting for, or why they had been summoned back into the hall. While he was still looking around, he noticed that his team had gathered around him. "Seems you were right," Vizen said. "There wasn't much I could learn by getting my butt handed to me. You should have understood that teamwork is vital, but being able to stand for yourself is equally important." Trask rebuked him. "I mean, seriously, why so few of you have used first magic during the whole exercise? The headmaster will not let me hear the end of this. He is even considering to have you all retake the whole class from the beginning with a different teacher. Well, Vincent tried to be considerate as possible towards the professor. First magic is good, but what could I have possibly achieved with it? I was trying to help my companions. They needed my erase. Trask glared at him, clenching his fist. Well, for example, you could have blinded the chingy so that when you attempted to dodge, it would haven't been able to intercept you. A failed array can be redone. A fallen member cannot be resurrected. Next time, instead of playing the hero, consider the bigger picture. Among those who heard him, most took Trask's words to heart. Aside from conjuring water to drink, very few of them had ever considered using first magic, deeming it useless. Remembering how she had used first magic to more easily slay the clackers, Floria stood straight as an arrow. Lit, on the other hand, could not stop rejoicing at the idea of getting rid of those blockheads once and for all. When all the students were assembled, the headmaster stepped forward. First of all, allow me to welcome every one of you back. That said, I have bad news and good news. The bad news is that contrary to what many could believe, this was still a mock exam. Hence, no matter if you lasted 1 hour, 1 day, or 3, you all get 0 points. Lin just took a pause, letting the groans and curses to die out before resuming his speech. This was your last wake-up call. From now on, you are on your own. This time, Lin just didn't keep still while talking. He walked among the various groups like a general inspecting his troops. You should have learned that your name, status, and bloodline aren't going to protect you from an enemy, no matter how important you consider yourself. It's not only in the wilderness that such thing holds no value, but also in the whole world. Do you really expect for everyone to respect or fear a feeble thing like a name? When you are outside the safety of your home, no one will ask you to introduce yourself before attacking. You should also have realized that petty behaviors create resentment. Many groups crumbled from the start, either due to past grudges or simply because some of you were deemed untrustworthy. Last but not least, it seems that many of you didn't understand the nature of this test. It was meant to show you a glimpse of what a real battle is, to allow you to fraternize and overcome your differences. You were supposed to help and teach each other, not to barely lump together because you were said so. Lin just stared at several students that seemed to shrink under his size. The week deadline was just a pretext. I never expected that some of you would have the gall to hole up hiding the whole time. This isn't a law school. What could you possibly learn from bending the rules? The exercise is worth 0 points, but such attitude cannot be tolerated. Any open violation of the rules will be punished by deducting points. As for the good news, points will be awarded to those that, according to their possibilities, helped their teammates. While the points deduction is individual, those gained by all team's members will be pooled and divided equally among those that cooperated. Otherwise, it would be unfair towards those that sacrificed themselves during the first day or that fell because of someone else's mistake. Also, I didn't lie when I told you it would last 7 days. For the remaining 4, you have no classes. You are free to rest, go home, or self-study. It's up to you to decide. I hope that you will make good use of this time to think about this experience and learn from your mistakes. Dismissed. After saying goodbye to his ex-teammates, Lit jumped in the nearest warp steps, walking double time towards his room. He and his bathroom had some serious catching up to do. No matter how Vision had made the makeshift outhouse comfortable, he couldn't compare with a real toilet. Lit could finally use invigoration, getting his strength back and relieving his sore muscles. He spent the next half an hour taking a long hot tub bath while conjuring several ice mirrors to get rid of the few facial hairs that haunted his still childish visage and cutting his hair with air magic. "Seems I was right about this exercise," Solus said while helping him with his cut. Without her help, Lit would have looked like IRS clerk on a Monday morning. "Did you have any doubts?" Lit replied, still wondering after all those years what was wrong with the haircut he had back on Earth. It's a system devised to teach stuck-up, conceited kids respect and discipline. Once you understand its goal, the rest comes easy. With a brain like yours, cracking the code was easy like connecting the dots numbered from 1 to 7. Solus would have liked to get praised more, but Lit's stomach kept grumbling loudly more and more often. With a heavy heart, Lit dressed up. He would have much preferred to sleep for the next 24 hours, but hunger was still one of the things that scared him the most. He needed to eat and restock. He was already heading towards the canteen when Solus stopped him. "Aren't you forgetting something?" "My pants are on, and I have yet to plagiarize and sell underwear, so my answer is no." "Your friends from the healer class, silly. It's the perfect moment to get together and bond a little. After the mock exam, you surely have many things to share with each other." "Please, have mercy. I'm so tired already. Maybe next time?" Lit cringed at the idea. "I'm here only to hoard knowledge and connection," Solus said while making her best Lit brooding tone impression. "I have no time to waste. I need valuable pawns once I become an adult again." Arguing with himself was beyond stupid, so he went to their rooms to invite them to an early dinner. When it was Freya's turn, she had just finished washing herself too. Her cheeks were still rosy from the hot water. That, coupled with the sweet smell of her skin and hair, made Lit dizzy for a second. Stupid body. Whenever it decided to grow, it will always be too late. Come on, she's so pretty. Solus still wanted her school romance, even if just as a spectator. What's wrong with a fling? She is a kid, and I'm old enough to be her father. Everything is wrong with that. Once at the canteen, no one actually spoke for a while. They were all too focused on eating the first proper meal in days. Only after the second serving, they began to share their stories. "So, how long did you manage to last?" Lit asked, hiding his sour mood behind a radiant smile. "My group was one of the last returning to the castle. Uriel didn't miss the opportunity to show off. Everyone agreed, making me the leader. Lucky bastard, poser, smart ass." He ignored the crossfire of name-calling. Uriel was aware of the power his father's status granted to him, so he accepted their envy with class. Hence, I managed to quickly make them assume a defensive formation. When the beasts arrived, they found us prepared. The worst part was standing watch at night in turns, sleeping in the open and eating grass and fruits all the time. Yeah, we agreed. The lack of food and the dirt were terrible. My group was comical. We had 2 skilled hunters, but none knew how to butcher prey. The smell of blood lured so many animals that we had to throw the game away and look for another place where to sleep. In the end, we didn't find any. So when the got attacked the second day, after a sleepless night, we lost 2 members at once. After escaping by skin of our teeth, we surrounded the next morning. We failed at making a decent camp again, and with no sleep at all, we were barely standing when the sun rose. What about you, Quilla? She was grinning from ear to ear. It was awesome, best 2 days of my life. Her answer caught everyone by surprise. Care to explain? Lid asked. Sure. First, you have to understand that everyone was pissed at me, since I'm the top of the healing class, one of the top students. The other 3 remarked as one. Sure, whatever. I didn't escape their notice that Quilla seemed much more confident and fiercer than before. Since they knew being second-rate at best, they started to call me just a healer and ordered me to not be in the way. So when the attack happened, I did as they told me and ran like the wind on my own. When the others managed to catch up with me, after being forced running away, I learned that our self-proclaimed leader had been pummeled by a sim, a monkey-type magical beast. They started calling me a coward and trying to put the blame on the defeat on me. At that point, knowing that we were being watched, I gave them a solid piece of my mind. I told them that for all I cared we could fail from day one, and that I had no intention of letting them treat me like trash for a second longer. Things quickly escalated, and when one of them tried to hit me, Professor Vaster appeared, beating all of them. Suprememagus, Chapter 86, Results, Part 2. Quilla stopped talking, laughing out loud at the memory, while tears of joy rolled out her eyes. He is quite fast for someone his size, you know, she said as soon as she managed to catch her breath. He beat mercilessly the one that assaulted me and those that did nothing but watch as well. He then made clear that if they attempted something funny again, he would get them expelled. After that, my teammates and I reached an agreement. I would help him, but only at the condition that I would not take watch at night and get the first choice of food. We didn't last long, but I had the time of my life ordering them around. So when I got back at the castle, the first thing I did was getting a ballot. Quilla took out the black sphere from her cuffs, slamming it on the table, drawing all the eyes on her. The feeling of freedom is intoxicating. Freya, you should get one too. I don't see why a smart girl like you has to endure morons all day long. What about you, Lid? We lasted until the afternoon of the 3rd day. Everything went fine. Lid cut his report short. It was time to get something back from his investment. During the exercise, I noticed that I cannot make full use of the potions without a weapon. You brought potions along? Uriel was incredulous. Yes, I did. I bought them as soon as I got some spare points. I needed to get used to their effects before using them in actual combat. I tested how long they lasted, their potency, and how strong I could hit or get hit before injuring myself. Nothing special, it's just the same thing we all did with the academy uniform. Judging from their blank stares, they had no idea what he was talking about. You do know that the uniform protects us, right? They nodded. And you don't feel the need to check how it works? How much punishment it can take before ripping? What kind of blows you can take head on and what to dodge? Silence befell again. Well, between this and the potions, I'd say you just got yourself some homework to do during the next days, Lid said, smiling encouragingly to them. Don't worry about the uniform. It can self-repair from small damages. Thanks for your advice, Freya said. What were you saying about the weapon? That even if I had it, I lacked proper training. Freya, your second specialization is Mage Knight. What weapon do you use? Wow, I mentioned it to you only once and you actually remembered. I use a rapier. It's quick and nimble sword that easily pierces through armor's joints, but it's not good for blocking heavy hints or cutting the enemy. According to my mentor, with my build is the weapon that suits me the best. Can you teach me the basic of swordsmanship? Lid asked. Having an enhanced strength is of limited use without a proper tool. Right now, when enemies come too close, I can only resort to first magic. I need more options. Maybe I can help too. Everybody turned to the unexpected guest. Mind if I join? Floria asked. I didn't get the chance to thank you earlier. Not you again, he inwardly sighed. Not at all. Like a perfect gentleman, Lid stood up, welcoming the newcomer. For a split second, he had been struggling to keep his amiable facade. Despite how tired and stressed he was, Lid could only play his part. Guys, this is Floria, my former team leader. Floria, these are my friends from the healer specialization, Uriel, Freya, and Quilla. It had taken him a lot of practice to say the word friends instead of the more accurate colleagues. Back on Earth, when Carl visited his workplace, many had got slightly offended with him for introducing them as simply colleagues. At that time, he didn't care. It was only a dead-end temporary job until his brother attained its master. Now, true personal relations were of the utmost importance. I never understood why people have such a loose definition of friendship. A friend is someone that knows you, from things like your passions and ambitions to trivial things like your favorite books or color. As I see it, they are not my friends. They don't like me as a person, only my academic achievements. They don't even know the names of my sisters. Don't be too hard on them. They are just kids, Solus mind shrugged. They have met you in a tough moment of their lives, and you have become close. You often spend time together, either in class or during the private lesson you gave them. For most people, that's more than enough to call someone a friend, especially considering you are not really open with them. Thank him for what? Your real interest was piqued. Lid was far from bad looking, especially since he had stopped with perpetual frown and the murderous glare. Being both rising stars in the light department, Uriel had tried multiple times to set double dates, but to no avail. This was the first time that the girl that had come looking for him had not been dismissed with a polite excuse, considering that they had spent a few days together and seemed in a good relationship. Uriel was hoping to get some juicy gossip. He sure likes them tall, he thought. Didn't he tell you? Floria was honestly surprised. Between her group's terrible start and how they heavily depended on Lid the whole time, she had expected him to complain about them with his friends as soon as they met. Instead, he had welcomed her with one of his rare dimple smiles, while the others clearly had no idea who she was. Tell us about what? As much as it hurts my pride to admit it, he was the key member from the start to finish. Without Lit, we would have never lasted more than one day, let alone rack 50 points per day. Floria sat down ordering her meal. Freya whistled with admiration. 30 points each for 3 days is a great score, considering it was a surprise test. How did you manage to do it? Floria chuckled. Sorry, I misspoke. I meant we each earned 50 points per day. 150 points in just 3 days? Uriel dropped his fork from the surprise. So much for nothing special. Please tell us all about it. For some reason, Lid had been quite evasive, to use an understatement. They didn't have to ask twice. Floria told them how he single-handedly repelled the magical beast on the first day, how he found and built them a safe haven. She put particular emphasis on the trick with the clacker's venom and on how he taught them how to survive in the wild with first magic. You wouldn't tell at first look, but Shorty here is a monster, she said, patting energetically his back. The last word forced Lee to remember his encounter with the Scorpicor, sending a cold shiver down his spine. He didn't like the idea of being somehow related to Abomination, even less how close he was to die. Luckily, his stiff expression blended perfectly with the others. Everyone at the table was shorter or barely taller than Lit, despite being older. If he had to be considered short, what were they supposed to be? Gnomes? An artificial cave? How could I not think about it? Uriel held his head between his hands in frustration. Being a warden, things like that were supposed to be his specialty. Finding the hill was just a stroke of luck. Lit dismissed the whole thing with a wave of a hand. I'm sure you would have done the same if you had the chance. Wow, I never pegged you for the humble type. In your shoes, I would brag about the exercise for at least a month. Freya said, looking at him in a new light. Floria exaggerates things too much. Yes, I did my part, but it was a team effort. Vincent actually made the cave stable and habitable, not to mention providing the outhouse and supporting us in battle with his arrays. Floria herself had a rocky start the first day, but she learned from her mistakes and saved me from the clackers. She turned to be an excellent leader, and it only thanks to her plan that we managed to survive the second day. She is the one that managed to poison the rye. I just give her the means to. Belia, well, she clearly lacked Vision's confidence or our battle experience, but she rose up to the occasion and did her part splendidly. I, on the other hand, incapable of leadership and proved to be short-fused, often venting my stress on my teammates. Lit resulted really convincing, mostly because he had been sincere. He had underestimated too many dangers and lost control of his emotions more than once. It was hard to draw a line where his manacore issues ended and his antisocial behavior started. He knew he had a problem, but no idea how to fix it. Whatever, Quilla said. Next time, I want to be in your group. Things would be so much easier." Dream on, free as I. There are only 34 healers for over 250 students. Hence, at least 16 groups had no healer during the exercise. It's impossible for us to ever end up together. Maybe, and maybe not, Uriel said. After the first trimester, students can go to the forest during the weekends to collect precious herbs and materials for themselves or exchange them for points, not to mention it's all experience. Lid felt that his plea for help had been lost in the conversation, but the topic was quite interesting. Is mandatory a group for the forest? And will we be under surveillance again during our training? He asked. No, there is no need for groups. One could go alone or with 20 friends. Although a 5 group is highly recommended, especially for 4th years. And no, there will be no surveillance. We would be on our own. The only safety measure is a panic button, very similar to a ballot, but with only one function, a distress signal to call for help in case something bad happens. Interesting, Lid pondered. I could go alone and vent my stress, or with them as a shock therapy. 2 days are too little to make me snap, but more than enough to steal my feeble social skills. Isn't your team 1 member short? It would be a pleasure and an honor to work together with the top students of the light department. Floria's request hit their egos in all the right spots. How could we possibly say no to someone Lid's hold in such high regard? Freya stood up and shook her hand. Since things were spiraling out of his hand, he decided to get the best of it and ask Floria's help too. But that was the wrong moment. His companions were too happy for having found a kindred spirit, and he was too tired to bring them back to reality. Lid decided to postpone his request for swordsmanship lesson after the 4 days break. Because of the private lessons he had imparted them about first magic, he had never got the chance to get back home during the weekends. It was time to correct that situation. Suprememagus, Chapter 87, Homecoming. Since Lid had been officially admitted at the White Griffon Academy, the lives of the inhabitants of the village of Lutia had become easier and safer, especially for Nana. When news spread that the village was the birthplace of a mage, nobles had become friendlier, avoiding to break the law or cause any trouble. Even passing merchants would be more likely to offer discounts, no more harassing the local smiths. The usual crowd of rogues and troublemakers that usually hanged around the tavern during the night had turned meek or left altogether. Of course, such behavior didn't come from the goodness of their hearts, nor from the fear of the youth that maybe in the future would become a great mage. Everyone knew he was away, and it would take no less than 2 years for him to return. The reason for such a sudden change of heart depended by the fact that those who didn't behave had made a strange habit of disappearing without traces, killed themselves leaving behind a suicide note confessing their crimes, or simply died in accidents. What everyone but Nana ignored was that a mage's birthplace was his starting fief. Being Lit evaluated as a rank A student, one of the Queen's personal units was constantly monitoring the village, weeding out problems in the bud. They had no way of distinguishing a simple criminal from someone that either by his own will or because manipulated, was attempting to harm Slit's family. Most importantly, they did not care. As soon as someone was identified as a potential threat, even if the investigations gave no results, they would get rid of the problem just to be on the safe side. The Queen kept them updated on Lit's performance and potential, stressing the importance of giving him no further reason to resent the Griffon kingdom and defect. After the results of the mock exam, it was only because of Duke Hestia's compliance towards the school rules, leaving his daughter alone in hot waters and not trying to take revenge, that he barely managed to keep his dukedom and his neck. Based on what her contacts had told Nana, once Lit's talent had been recognized by Manacore himself, both the court and the Mage Association had taken to heart his well-being. For Nana, it meant the chance to keep a big price on her services, despite having nothing more to do outside her role of a healer. Oh, ho, ho! She laughed, enjoying another sunny morning. Who would have thought that helping that young spirit of your brother could bring the new heyday of my life? It never been so peaceful in years. How could my little brother have anything to do with it? Tista chuckled while using chore magic to clean the room. Nana shook her head. Tista, my girl, you outshine your brother in many things. Looks, kindness, bedside manners. There are just two things that you should really take from him. One is talent. What about the other? Despite having learned spells up to Tier 3, Tista had still no idea how Lit had managed to cure her. She could only explain it with an abysmal gap in their gift for magic. No, I will never criticize someone about something innate. I was talking about being cynical and practical. You are too naive for your age. If your brother was here, he would look at me with his soul-chilling glare, make a couple of questions to which I would answer enigmatically, and I'm sure he would understand what I mean. He doesn't have a soul-chilling glare, Tista rebuked her mentor. He is the most loving and caring little brother one could ask for. Nana scoffed. Because he always treated you like a precious gem. Try asking your future brother-in-law what does he think about it. And when you do, look him straight in the eyes and don't let him change the subject. Tista was about to rebut when the door of the home office opened. Both the women turned their heads, discovering that he wasn't a patient. Lit had returned. Little bro! Tista welcomed him with a warm hug. You haven't changed at all. He held her tight, wishing he could kiss her on the head, but she was 7 centimeters taller than him. I went away for a month, not a year. Or did you expect me to come back scared from the battlefront? Meanie. She pushed him away with a fake rage, giving a small punch on his shoulder. Thanks for everything you did for me, Master Nana. I wouldn't be in the academy without you. Lit hugged his old mentor too. Nana enjoyed the embrace for a moment, asking herself if it hadn't been a mistake choosing to not have children. After her fall from grace, she had withdrawn, avoiding any meaningful relationship to not get hurt again. Maybe it was just the old age, or maybe hanging with those two little brats had cracked her armor. In any case, it was too late. Why are you wasting time with this old bat? Nana scolded him, poking him on the head with her walking cane. Your parents are worried sick about you. Tista, You can have the rest of the day off. Bring him home. Use force if you must. Tista giggled, taking her brother's arms before leaving. Someone feels clingy today. Since when do you like getting spoiled? Lit laughed at the affectionate gesture. Since ever the... During their walk, Lit noticed many youths suddenly changing direction or crossing the road. Between her beauty, her status, and income as the future healer of the village, Tista was one of the most coveted maidens. Very few cared about the fact that she was still 2 years from the marrying age. Before Lit's departure, most were too scared to approach her. He had killed men at the age of 6, a magical beast at 8, and was infamous for being overprotective of his family. While mothers and girls praised struck fear in the hearts of the suitors that now believed to finally have free hand with her. Is there someone in particular bothering you? Tista made one of her radiant smiles that could lit up a room. No thanks. I can defend myself. Besides, they are harmless. Are you sure? Accident happened. You just have to say the word. Solus jolted. Despite the casual tone and his bright smile, he wasn't joking at all. Tista didn't notice and laughed at the joke. Speaking of accidents, the village lately had become real quiet. I fear that after you left, brigands would attack as soon Nana left the village. Instead, the whole region has never been so safe in years. Lit raised an eyebrow in disbelief. It didn't make any sense until he remembered Linjo's words. I had almost forgot my family is under surveillance. I must be careful not to be followed when I perform my experiments. Since they spoke on daily basis with the communication amulet, Tista asked him why he had disappeared in the last 3 days. Lid told her everything about the mock exam, leaving her in awe. 5 mages fighting together against evil magical beasts? What an experience! I bet you look like the heroes of the stories that always told us when we were little. Magical beasts are not evil. Some are good, other bad, just like humans. And we didn't look like heroes, more like scared teens. Plus, I'm terrible with people, and you know it. Have you not been listening? Or are you just trying to flatter me? Tista punched his arm again in reply. When they arrived home, Lit noticed that the cultivated fields were bigger than he remembered. There were farm hands helping their parents. Now that all their kids had become independent, Elena and Raz had decided to expand the family business. When they saw him, they ran to his side, hugging him while crying uncontrollably. My baby, my little baby is back, was the only thing they managed to say. Lit felt incredibly happy and awkward at the same time. Happy for their infinite love, awkward because he had yet to get used to it, and because he didn't know if he deserved it. The real Lit, their son, had died 12 years ago, replaced by an alien mind. He knew it wasn't his fault. He didn't kill the baby, nor he had chosen them willingly. Sure, Orpal and Tryon had damned themselves with their actions, yet it was the miracle survival of the baby that had led them to those events. Lit felt responsible for breaking up that wonderful family. Aren't you forgetting something? Solus meddled with his train of thoughts. Without you, your mother could have died of childbirth. Remember how weak she was at the time? If she hadn't been grief-stricken, she may have not survived, letting herself go without fighting. Not to mention that we don't know what would have happened, Orpal might as well started targeting Tista instead of you, and we both know how she wasn't able to stand up for herself. She could have died, either by illness or by your sick brother's hand. I can easily see him teaching her a lesson, resulting in her condition getting worse. Sure, he would later apologize and realize his mistake, but I still think he would have gotten himself disowned. Did you somehow force him to say all those mean things to Tista, making her, your mother, and Elisa cry all the time? Did you manipulate him into sending those 5 goons to beat you to a pulp? No, it was all his doing, and he paid the price. It's much better having 2 healthy, good children instead of a hot-headed, conceited one. The only way Warple had to be happy was to be an only child. Knowing the human nature, Lid was prone to agree with her. Stealing a newborn's food, his obsessive need for attentions were all indicators of a twisted personality. Lid hadn't forgiven Orpal, nor felt sorry for him, only for his family. Feeling Tista's warm embrace, seeing her safe and happy, quickly dispelled the doubts that were clouding his mind. Saving a single Tista or Elisa was worth killing 1,000 Warples. Suprememagus, Chapter 88, Solace Surprise. After entering inside the house, away from prying eyes, Lid made use of his newfound knowledge as a healer. He used invigoration to spot and fix all bone, muscular and even intervertebral disc damages accumulated in his parents' bodies over time due to the hard work in the fields and the aging. He also used Tier 4 magic to not make them feel tired because of the treatment, borrowing them his energy. What the Raz moved around, feeling the subtle changes. I feel full of energy, and my knots have disappeared. It feels like I'm 20 again. Glad to hear it, Lid replied, hugging his father. I have learned so much in just a month. The academy had shown me how limited my horizons were. There are many things I can still improve. He also performed a full check on Tista. She was always fit as a fiddle, but Lid never stopped worrying about her. They talked about his mock exam, of which Lid gave an accurate description, although removing the encounter with the Scorpicore from the picture. Instead, he put particular emphasis on how he developed a good relationship with his teammates and Floria in particular. The doctored version of the story was aimed to avoid them worrying about him being alone in the academy, hoping to help overcome the long-term sense of guilt for him never having any friends in the past. His parents kept believing that Lid had spent his childhood alone because the family needed money and food, forcing him to become a hunter first and a healer later. But that was only half the truth. He had almost nothing in common with teenage magicians, let alone with young children. Work hard had always been an excuse to avoid taking any unnecessary risk of blowing his cover. After settling the matters with his family, Lid decided to walk in the woods. He needed some time alone, not only to sort out his chaotic feelings, but also to try to convert everything he had learned from the academy and its books into magic. Knowing that he could be under surveillance too, he walked toward his private clearing in the Tron Woods using live vision, while Solo scanned their surroundings with all the senses at her disposal. Aside from us and the animals, I can't find anything else, she reported. Same. I believe that it's possible for the Queen's men to have magical items that conceal their presence. But I doubt they can avoid all our combined resources. I use true magic, while you, well, beats me what you use. Bottom line, I think we are safe. Probably they have been sent to keep an eye on the external threats, not on me. Yeah, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Solace gave her first paranoid remark ever. By the way, do you remember that before the mock exam I talked about a surprise? Of course. Well, time to reveal my new gift. We need a special place, so I need you to follow my instructions. Lid casted his slipstream flight spell, moving in an irregular pattern towards the destination Solace had pointed him to. At the same time, both of them were scanning their surroundings. Following them at such high speed while remaining covered should have been impossible. They soon reached the inner part of the woods, where months before they had assisted the three kings against the Wither. It was still a wasteland, only grass and weeds had started growing anew. We are in the clear. I didn't notice anyone following us. Did you choose this zone because it provides no cover to our pursuers? No, because it's one of the few spots that can serve our purpose. Thanks to my sense of self, every time I regain a new function, I always know how to make it work. This one is special and needs a special spot. What's so great about this place? It's depressing and more dead than Julius Caesar. Solus chuckled. Did you ever wonder why the Wither moved in this direction every time it managed to escape? Normally, I say it was just desperate, but I bet you have a better explanation. Bingo. I noticed it the first time we came here, but back then I couldn't make head or tails about it. You see, with my mana sense, I'm not only able to differentiate people, but also landscapes. That's because the world is literally full of mana, and some places more than others. During our travels, I noticed several spots where world energy was much more abundant than usual, and this one is one of them. I believe that the Wither was looking for this place to leech the massive amount of world energy to survive the fight. Solace detached from its fingers in her usual spider form, reaching a clearing a few meters away before starting to burrow into the ground. In front of his astonished eyes, a blue pulse lit the clearing. At every beat something came out of the ground. It was like looking at a fast-forwarded video, where one could see a seed become a flower in less than 10 seconds. But in Solo's case, the small pebble grew into a tower. A puny demolished tower, to be precise. It barely reached 10 meters of diameter, with a single flimsy door, enough to get carried away by a strong gust of wind. The tower only had the ground floor and no roof. Debris covered its top, like it had collapsed on itself. This is indeed a surprise. Lid was impressed nonetheless. Does this thing come with any defense mechanism? If so, wherever we go, we will always have a place to stay, avoiding humans and beasts alike. First of all, this is not a thing. That's me. Solus was quite pissed off being treated as an object. And yes, I do have defense mechanisms, so get your rude ass inside so I can activate them. He did as instructed, discovering that the structure inside was bigger than it looked on the outside. On his right, there was a set of crumbled stairs going up and another that seemed to go down unimpeded. In front of him there was a single door leading to a bedroom almost identical to the one Lid had made in his built house. Yet the bed was king-size canopy one, and the room had a private bathroom just like his room at the academy. Mass displacement? Lid asked in amazement. Yes, for the first time he could hear Solo's voice with his ears. Only part of this form exists in our plane. The rest is actually in the pocket dimension. Do you like this piece of home away from home? She was clearly eager for a praise. Very. It's an amazing replica. I can't thank you enough for giving me a real toilet. It means the world to me. Solus giggled. You are welcome, but this is not a surprise, just part of it. Go downstairs, please. In the basement, there were 2 more rooms. The first one was a perfect copy of the Forge Mastering training hall, down to the last small detail. I was able to reproduce both the potions and the Forge Mastering labs, even the equipment, she explained. But I cannot create from nothing ingredients or consumables. Some things we only can buy them. Lid opened the drawer supposed to contain rings and amulets to enchant, but just as Solus had announced, it was empty. Not a problem, he replied. There is not much that I can do with my limited knowledge. Luckily, when I told Professor Laika that I wanted to do some practice of my own, she gave me a few rings and a bottle of the liquid for drawing magic circles. We have enough for a few attempts and applying true magic to Forge Mastering. The only Forge Master spell Lid had seen was the one for realizing dimensional items. He drew the circles and the runes with the utmost care. There was no one to help him in case something went wrong. When he finished, he placed a pebble in its center. He wasn't expecting to succeed, only to study through mana flow to reproduce it with true magic. So instead of chanting, he used invigoration to call upon the world energy and sent it to fill the magic circle. It was easy, and it didn't affect his mana reserve, since he was employing external energies. Unlike Professor Laika, he didn't fill the circles to the brim. Being an experiment, the less energy the better. Not to mention, he wanted to avoid creating top-tier rings after a month. According to the books, it was sufficient to give the circle mana until the air started to crackle to obtain the lowest class dimensional objects. Lid knew the 13 runes and their spells like the back of his hand. He had performed them countless times during the lessons and on his own. Remembering the characteristic feeling of each one, he waved the rune's incantation in a rapid succession. In Lid's mind, Laika's performance, albeit exceptional, was like a kid playing a piano one key at a time. He was convinced that to maximize the effects, the different spells had to complement and integrate each other, like in a magical symphony. The runes rose in the air one after the other, forming a perfect ring around the pebble in the blink of an eye. Lid then started compressing the mana inside the runes. Soon all the energy was encompassing the little stone, trying to seep inside. Now it was the most critical moment. Lid had to force energy and matter to fuse together. Things were going smoothly, but in the back of his head there was a constant alarm that something was wrong. Suddenly, the energy mass imploded, pulverizing the pebble. Despite being unable to escape, the mana gone wild still managed to burn the circle, leaving a crack on the floor. "Ouch! That hurt," Solus said. "Sorry, my bad," Lid said, embarrassed by his failure. "Any ideas what has gone wrong?" "Right off the bat, I can come up with at least 8 errors you did." She actually replied at his rhetorical question, leaving Lid in awe once again. Suprememagus, Chapter 89, Trial and Error. First of all, Laika said that the size of the circle matters, and you made it too big for a pebble. A smaller one would have been better to save ink and better focus the mana. Also, you formed the mana sphere too fast, not giving it enough time to get properly imbued with magic. Then there is the matter of how you arranged the runes. Solo started nitpicking every single mistake he had done, according to his own earlier analogy, more like someone playing a symphony. Solos was making it feel like a button masher had attempted to go pro at fighting games. Everything she said sounded right, and that made her even more irritating. "Well, why didn't you tell me all of this earlier?" he grunted. "How could I spot mistakes you had yet to do? It isn't my fault if, being the wise one, I am capable of learning from others' mistakes, while normies like you must stumble and fall before walking properly." "Oh yeah, Miss Wise? If you are that good, why don't you come here and show me how it's done?" "Gladly." The room started pulsing with a white light. The crack in the floor disappeared. Then another pebble flew on the ground, while several drops of ink hit the floor, forming the runes again in a perfect circular pattern. "You have forgotten the circles, Solus. So much for being a wise one," Lit playfully mocked her. "Do you mean this?" Suddenly the space around the pebble was filled with mana, perfectly contained in a circular shape, just encompassing the runes. "How did you—" "I learned invigoration from you, and we are actually sitting on a geyser of wild energy. It's not that hard to keep it stable for someone capable of space displacement," she proudly explained, cutting him short. "Do you mean in this form you are capable of keeping the mana stable without a limit?" Lid stopped their cheerful quarrel, shocked by the revelation. "Well, duh, why?" "Because that means that time is no matter an issue. At least while I practice in here. This is perfect magical furnace for a complete beginner like me." Lid waved the 13 spells again, following Solo's instructions and earlier advices. No more worried by the mana dispersal, he bid his time, making sure that the mana sphere was strong and stable, letting the energy seep in the pebble before the final step. And so the pebble melted before he could even attempt the fusion between matter and energy. "Another failure? What did I do wrong this time?" Lid asked in frustration. "Honestly, I don't know," Solo's mind shrugged. "There were some things you could have done better, but in theory, it should have worked." Just to be sure they weren't missing anything, this time Lid put on the ground one of the spare rings, and with Solo's assistance they repeated the whole process, but this time using fake magic. The forge mastering went without a hitch. "What in the world?" Lit could not understand why true magic was failing him. We did the same thing step by step. Why did it work this time? Third time is a charm? Solus said without actually believing it. They kept crushing, melting, and vaporizing many pebbles. But at the end of the day, their only success was the low-grade ring made with fake magic. It's almost noon. Better stop, or your mother will worry. Yeah, Lit left the lab, heading back at the ground floor. His eyes wandered inside the bedroom, whose door he had left open. Solus, do you remember my comment about the dirty mind of those who designed the Academy's rooms? He asked, while raising an eyebrow in suspicion. Yes, why? Why does my room have such a big bed? And why the hot tub is clearly designed to comfortably accommodate two persons? Well, I thought that maybe sometime in the future you would like to have some company. If he didn't know her any better, Lid would have swore there was a hint of mischievousness in her voice. Thanks for your concern, but I'll give a hard pass on that. I'll never reveal to anyone your existence. It's too dangerous. With a sigh on her side, both the bed and the tub shrank. On the second thought, keep the bed big. It's more comfortable that way. Ignoring Solus' grumblings, Lid was about to exit, but stopped at the last moment. Is the coast clear? Yes. In this form, all my capabilities are enhanced by the world's energy. I can even spot the three kings despite how far away they are from us. I can even imagine someone escaping my detection. Even in my weakened state, I'm always a legendary mage tower. You have yet to tell me what defense measures you can use. Not much actually. I can turn invisible, and when you are within the premises, I can sink underground without leaving any traces. At the moment, my options are quite limited. I could even sustain this form without borrowing such abundant external mana can keep my form. Lid was impressed nonetheless. Her cloaking, spatial displacement, and mana manipulation were already at that level despite a yellow manacore. What would Solus be capable once she reached the cyan level 2? Lid returned home fast as he had gone to make harder spot their new special place. Don't you think you are wearing your paranoia cap too much? No, Lid replied. If I was the one supervising the village, keeping an eye on someone like me would be wise. In their eyes, I'm still a kid. Our family isn't poor anymore, but it's not rich either. I have no real ties with the kingdom. On paper, I'm the perfect example of a talented youth that could be easily swayed with promises of riches, power, and money. Once again, neither of them spotted a tail, but that wasn't enough for Lid. His pursuers could just really be good at hiding or waiting for him to lower his guard. Back at home, for the first time in a month, the whole family was reunited for lunch. Lid arrived just in time to hear Eliza complain that her fiancé couldn't join them because of his work. Lid was secretly happy with that. After 3 days of pretending, he just wanted to be himself. He did not like Center, but since he never liked any of his sister's suitors, it didn't mean much. Dad, I think this is partly your fault. You should stop glaring at him every time you think I'm not looking. Since when do I glare? Raz put the right hand on his heart, feigning sincerity. You know that I like that boy, otherwise I would have never consented to the marriage. Please, since I was 12, you glared at everyone who got anywhere near me. No matter if a kid, man, or older, you seem to have passed that skill to lead. Stanton said to me multiple times that whenever he is alone with you, he feels like facing a firing squad. That's a sign of guilty conscience, Raz rebutted. Mine instead is clear. Lit chimed in. I have always been frank with him. In fact, it was the barrage of not-so-wild treats that scared his future brother-in-law the most. You too? Sis, Lil Bro doesn't glare, he's only protective. No one in the family had the courage to tell Tista that her brother, that she considered the hero in her heart, wasn't as perfect as she pictured him, so they happily changed the topic. Lit really enjoyed the meal with his family. Despite she did not have access to high-quality ingredients like the Academy's cook, his mother's dishes were always the one tasting the best. Raz shared with him his plans for expanding the farms. The days when they had barely the money to keep the house standing were long gone. As soon as his father finished, the family started with a barrage of questions he was unprepared for. They wanted to know everything about the academy, how were the professors, how his schoolmates were behaving, if he was eating well, and so on. Clearly, they had only half believed Tulit's daily reports and wanted to have clear answers while looking at him in the eyes. It took quite a while to convince them that no one was harassing him and that both the headmaster and the professor were good people. He even had to exaggerate his relationship with the exam group, making it sound like they were already good friends. Contrary to his expectations, none of his parents seemed happy with such news. Lit, I don't think you should be so trusting. You barely know them for 3 days, Elena said. You see, not always people are like they appear. For every good and sincere person you meet, there is always another ready to say everything, just to get what they want. I'm sorry, dear, but it's the truth. I wanted to hide this as long as I could, but your safety is more important than preserving your innocence. Even in our small village, since Nana took you under her wing, your rise in status has made many of our community proud, but many more envious of your success. My friends kept me posted about all the gossip, how so many thought you were an arrogant brat at first. Then once you started your apprenticeship, they started to wish for you to fail, just to feel better about themselves. Raz took Elena's hand, holding it tight. What your mother is trying to say is that if even people that we know for years and almost consider as family can be so mean, the more the reasons to be wary of strangers. Don't believe blindly in pretty words and kind smiles. You don't know a person's true worth until you really need their help. Always remember what happened to the poor Nana. So don't try to change or force yourself to be someone else just to please a bunch of snotty kids. If they really are your friends, they'll accept you for who you are. If not, know that is not your fault. It's just that the world is harsh. True friendship isn't as easy to find like in the bedtime stories I told you when you were little. A real friend is like a treasure, hard to find, even harder to keep. Life will keep pushing you away, but you must never let go of a real friend. Lit unconsciously rubbed his thumb on Solo's ring, making her giggle like a little girl. I never expected my father to be so direct, Lee thought, without realizing what it meant to him, thinking of the word father without making it sound like an insult. I always took him for a simple and honest man, trying his best at simple and honest job while taking care of his family. Who would have guessed that one day he would make me a speech about being cynic and distrustful? While pondering about life's twisted irony, Lit realized the key element he and Solace had been missing to make true forge mastering work. Suprememagus, Chapter 90, Lit's Surprise. Lit's first instinct was to run away and test his theory, but he hadn't returned home to spend his time working. He really needed some real rest while enjoying the luxury of being his real self with no strings attached. "Mom, Dad, thank you," he replied. "I know how cruel people can be. I learned it from experience since the day I started working as a healer. It started with that noble trying to kill me and continued by showing me what a man can do to his wife, a parent to his own children." He avoided mentioning brothers since despite the passing of years, Orpal's name kept stirring a lot of pain in his parents' heart. "This village is not perfect. The world is not perfect. But I'll do my best to remain true to myself and make you all proud of me." Lit could say that looking them straight in the eyes, since the wording of choice didn't mention what his moral were or how he meant to achieve his goals. In his mind, it was all white lie to prevent his family from worrying about him. He stood up and hugged his family one at a time, feeling the warmth of their embrace and love. After finishing their meal, Lit insisted to be the one to do the dishes. Elena opposed at first, but before anyone could even move one plate, he had already washed and cleaned dishes, cookware, and the whole room. "Show off," Tista pretended to scold him. They spent the following hour discussing the last arrangements for Eliza's marriage, which brought several grants from the male side of the family, and Lit's academy life, which brought several grants from the female side of the family. He had lived all his life as a monk, going from home to work and vice versa, and doing nothing else. They had hoped that being surrounded by so many girls, he would have found one of his liking. "Damn it. First Uriel tries to set me up with a date, then you, Solace, with all your innuendos, and now this, for crying out loud. Who cares about romance at 12? "You would be right," Solace replied, "if this wasn't a world where people get married around 16 and 17 years of age. There's only so much time to just hang out for fun or make experience with the opposite sex, unless one plans to marry with his first girlfriend or has an arranged marriage, of course." After that, everyone had to go back to work. Daylight was precious, and only Lit was actually on vacation. Before going back to his forge mastering lab, Lit visited and treated all the animals in the farm and the farmhands his parents had employed. It would ensure the rise of their reputation and save them quite some money. Once back inside Solace's ruined tower form, he could finally share his alignment. He had actually offered her to read his mind to stop the pestering, but she refused. With the growing trust between them, they rarely accessed each other's mind, preferring to rely on their telepathic link unless it was absolutely necessary. The problem with our earlier experiments is that we were just imitating the form of the forge mastering spell, not its nature. "Meaning?" Solace asked. "Well, replicating a fireball is easy. It's just an exploding flame. But what does exactly forge mastering do? What does each rune individually? That's the problem that we overlooked. Fake magic is like true magic with autopilot. He took out a dimensional amulet he had bought from the academy, using invigoration on it while Solus did the same. Unlike for normal animated objects, invigoration was capable of tracing the mana flow coursing through magical items. It revealed a mana sphere similar to a core, but much rougher and simpler, kept stable by 13 mana patterns that insulated it from external influences. By my maker, how did you get the idea of using invigoration like this? Solus was amazed by this discovery. Actually, I didn't. It's all thanks to that Scorpicore. Remember when it passed me its pin's nest to analyze it? Solus minded not. That's the first time that I did it. But back then I was too scared to understand the implication of the lesson the creature imparted me. I don't know if it did it on purpose to teach me how to recognize cursed object or was just trying to convince me of its good faith. Whatever was its purpose, it taught me something new about true magic and in turn the true nature of forge mastering. Unlike some hypothesized forge mastering isn't about feeling the mana flow in an object and enhance it. On the contrary, it allows to create a pseudo mana core that has to be literally engraved into an object and then stabilize it by precise mana patterns that feed on the world energy for self-sustenance and prevent the core from dissipating. Unlike yours, the pseudo-cores have no conscience, just a purpose. Without an external binding, they would just dissipate in thin air. To double-check my theory, let's analyze the cuffs on my uniform too. The pseudo-core designed to store the ballot was even smaller than the one in the amulet, but more refined. Well, this makes sense, Solus pondered. The amulet can store anything while the cuffs only the ballot. To apply such restriction, the core must be more complex, but that means, yeah, Lid sighed, it means that we will have to forge master all the items in the book with fake magic just to study their cores and understand the underlying principles before creating something really new. Lid needed several attempts to understand how to carve the patterns inside an object without looking into it via invigoration. Every test required a lot of focus and mana expenditure, but with every failure, he was closer to success. Well, now we also know why Forge Master requires so much mana. Even an innate object offers a tremendous resistance to the external energy. The more complex and powerful the artifact, the more complex the pseudo-core must be. If a simple dimensional object is taking so much time and effort, I wonder how powerful was the mage that created that pin's nest. Solus said. Probably it was his or her life's work, Lid replied. Yeah, it also explained why second attempts at forge mastering are useless. Every rune leaves a carving. If one creates a wrong pathway for the mana, the objects become useless. Lid nodded, noticing something unusual. Odd. I should have exhausted my mana many times over, yet I'm only starting to feel tired now and I have yet to use invigoration once. Maybe, thanks to our bond, you have access to the world energy geyser too, Solus proposed. That would explain why in the legends mages were said to be invincible in their towers. Between an almost endless supply of mana and the tower defenses, defeating them should be high or nigh impossible. Lit and Solus kept working non-stop, and before sunset they had already realized their first dimensional pebble. Lit brought it in the bedroom and Solus framed it right beside the entrance, adding a small tag with a date and a small incision. Our first work together. After that, they created 7 low-tier dimensional rings with true magic. He was certain to be able to craft even the high-tier ones, but that would have been a fatal mistake. Dimensional rings could not be kept hidden, they had to be used, otherwise it was like not having one at all. According to the Academy's records, Lit creating low-tier object was already an impressive feat. Distributing freely high-tier ones would be madness, no less than putting a bullseye on his chest and back. Before returning home, he went to Celia's place. His first mentor, the woman who taught him how to survive with his hunting skills. "Look who's back, still all dressed up and everything, I see." Celia hugged him, leaving Lit quite shocked. He never pegged her for the affectionate type. "Well, yeah, this uniform can get dirty and it's almost indestructible. I have no reason to change outfit," he explained, returning the hug. "Wish I had one too," she sighed. "Since you left, doing the house chores is such a bother." "This disciple is really sorry, Master Celia," Lit mocked her. "But I hope this will make your life easier." He handed her a ring. She wasn't impressed at all. "You know, it's all right for a hunter to be stingy, but being smug while handing a cheap ring like this is below even us." Seeing her disappointing face, Lit laughed out loud. "I admit, the ring isn't worth more than 10 copper coins by itself, but just like me, it's more than meets the eye." He shortly explained her how to imprint the ring. Even someone who had never practiced charm magic could do it at the first try. After realizing what it was, Celia was speechless. "I did it myself," Lit explained. "It can only store 3 square meters, but at least you will not be bothered anymore by equipment and your praise. If you feel lazy, you can even use it to store food and keep it warm." This is too much. I cannot accept it." Celia knew that such object was worth over 30 gold coins. One could build a luxury house at Lutia with all that money. Not to mention, it was an invaluable tool for a hunter. Keeping the prey fresh before field dressing it or while looking for a good buyer. She tried to give it back, but Lit closed her hand around it with his palm. "You can and you must. First, because once imprinted, it's useless to anyone else unless you die, of course. And second, because despite you have always been a stinging, nagging master that would make rip-off deals, it's only because of your help that my family was saved from hunger and starvation. And that's a debt that not even this ring can settle."